Hello and welcome to Sensei Scott's Coding Dojo. In this video, we'll be reviewing the right-click add-in attached to issue number 3. So for this video, we're going to need Microsoft Excel. So as you can see here, I have a new workbook open. And basically what we're going to do is add in a sub-menu in our right-click context menu here that enables us to do some cool things with the cells and with the worksheets. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing you're going to need to do is install your developer ribbon. If you don't have that installed, what you can do is really right click anywhere and go to this customize ribbon. From there you should be taken to this dialog box, and you just want to have developer checked here on the right. And once you have developer checked, go ahead and press OK. So you should see the developer ribbon now, and what we're going to do is open up Visual Basic. So we have Visual Basic open over here. And I'm just going to resize my screen a little bit. All right. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and write a macro that will enable the new right-click menu. And to do that, we need to put it in the This Workbook module. The reason why we need to do it in the This Workbook module is because we're going to add this code to a specified module called Workbook Open. So you can see here we dropped our toggle from General to Workbook. And it was preset on open, but you can hit this drop down to view a bunch of different built-in macros to do different things. So I'm going to go ahead and use workbook open, and in here we can start writing the code to add in a right-click menu. So I mentioned in the article, I always like to start the modules with option explicit. And what this will do is it'll force variable declarations. So instead of being able, or if you accidentally were to have a typo on one of your variable names, if you don't have option explicit, the macro will still run. If you do have option explicit, the macro will not be able to compile and will generate an error, letting you know that you've mistyped a variable. So I always like to have option explicit, and I definitely recommend it. So the first thing we're going to do is create a menu object. So I'm going to say dim menu as object, and then we're going to need to go ahead and set this menu object. So since it's an object, we need to use the set keyword, and what we're going to do is set this to a shortcut menu. So we have application dot shortcut menus with an S, and then we need to give it a index. So we can use the enum for Excel worksheet cell. And what this will do is activate a shortcut menu whenever you right click on a cell inside of the worksheet. So one of the things I always like to do when writing in VBA code is to kind of code in lowercase. And then if I hit enter, I can kind of check to see if I spelled everything right and if I used the right keywords based on the capitalization. So you can see our text was capitalized here, so we know we're good. So this will create a new menu, but we actually haven't added it. We haven't added it to our right click. So what we need to do is then go dot menu items, and then we need to add a menu, and we'll go ahead and call it Dojo. All right, so now we have it here. So just to test this, what we can do is go ahead and run this code. So I'm going to click here and just hit this play button. And so nothing really happened, but if we right click over in Excel, we'll see we have a Dojo submenu created for us. So that's exactly what we wanted. So now we can go forward into adding 2 more submenus and then some macros associated with different items. One thing to look at here, if we were to run this again, we will see that we now have 2 dojos, which is not what we want. So in order to reset the the right click context, so there's only 1 dojo. Every time we run it, what we can do is application dot command bars, and this is the cell command bar dot reset. So that will reset the command. So now if we were to run it again, now you see we only have the 1 dojo. So I recommend doing this just in case you run this twice. You don't want the right click menu to pop up there twice. You only want 1 of them. So next thing we're going to do here is go ahead and add our submenus. So just to kind of shorten some of the code, I'm going to use a with statement. Menu dot menu items, So now if you think of it as when we first did this menu, we added the Dojo menu now to our parent right-click menu. Now we need to add another menu inside of the Dojo parent menu. So with that menu, we are going to add another menu and call it cells. So if I was just end with, just to kind of see this happen again, press play. Now we have Dojo, now we have cells, nothing there. So now under the cells, we need to start adding our menu items. So to do that, we would need to do the cells menu, we would need to do an add menu items. So what I'm going to do is another with statement here. So with the new cells menu that we're adding with its menu items, we are going to add the 3 macros for protect. So that's the name of the button on the right-click menu, and then we need the name of the macro, protect cells, and then we're going to add trim, and we're going to call that trim cell, and then lastly we're going to add format, and the name is going to be format cell. All right, so now we can go ahead and before we run it, add an end with here. So that's the only 3 we need. So we can go ahead and run end with, and let's see what we look like. Yeah, so we have Dojo, we have cells, and then we have our 3 items. If you try to run this, you'll get an error because these macros don't exist yet. So after we create the right-click menu here, we'll need to add in another menu another module for these macros. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and add the Sheets submenu. So I'm going to grab this here and just fix this indent, and we'll call this Sheets. And now we're going to protect, we're going to hide, and we are going to duplicate. So we want protect sheet now. We want hide sheet, and we want duplicate sheet. All right. So now that that's all done, again, let's go ahead and run it and see how we look. So we got Dojo, we got Sheets, and then we got cells. Awesome. So now, like I said, we just need to create the macros behind all 6 of these buttons. So what I'm going to do is right-click, and I'm going to insert a module. So now we have a new module. I'm going to go ahead and rename this Dojo. And now we can start adding our macros. So again, the first thing we want to do here is option explicit. And we can start writing the macros. So the first one we're going to do here is the protect cell macro. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through each cell in the selected range, and then if the cell is locked, we're going to unlock it. If the cell is unlocked, we're going to lock it. So in order to do the cell iteration, we're going to need a variable. So we're going to dim cell as a range, and now we can do our for loop for each cell in selection. So selection is a keyword for whatever selected in my Excel spreadsheet. And what we're going to do is if the cell's locked, then if the cell is locked, then we're going to set the cell locked equal to false. So that means if the cell is locked, then we're going to unlock it. Else cell.locked equals true. So basically, this is a 1-line if statement, so I don't need an end if. But basically, if the cell is locked, then unlock the cell by setting the cell locked property to false. If the cell is not locked, which means it'll go here, then we're going to want to set the cell locked property to true. So then we can do next cell. And that is it for the protect cell macro. So let's see how this looks. So we'll go ahead and we'll use the selection we have here. We'll right click, Dojo, Cells, Protect. And oops, like I spelled protect wrong in the adding of the button or the right click menu. So let's go ahead and protect. All right, so looks like I did it wrong there too. All right, so I'll need to rerun this to make the effect change. So now right click Dojo, Cells, Protect. Now we can't see anything here, but what you can do is you can go under, we can go under font, but we can also just do review. So if we were to protect this sheet, now if we were to try to add something here, an error, let's see. So you can kind of see there we have a cell protection, so we can't edit the cells that we previously had selected. So we can kind of see where our range was. We can make the change. So let's unprotect that, and then I'll protect these guys now. Protect. So now I can't change these guys since they're protected. All right, so that's the protection. The next one here we're going to do is do a cell trimming. So I'm just going to unprotect this sheet for good measure. And so what we're going to do is create the new macro, trim cell. And we're going to use a very similar method here. So I'm just going to copy this code, paste it here under trim cell. And instead of this if statement here, I just need to set the cell's value equal to trim of the cell's value. So I always use cell.value2 whenever I'm referring to a cell's value, just kind of out of habit, but out of good practice. I think it runs faster when you're doing a lot of calculations. Basically what it'll do is when you have a number value, cell.value or just cell will read the formatting of the number as well as the value. So for instance, if we had a date here of August 15th, and down here in our immediate pane, if you don't see this, you can press Control G, or you can go from View and click on Immediate window here. But if we were to do selection.value, we'll see we have the date here. This question mark just prints something out to the console, and we can see selection.value. But if we were to do selection.value2, we get the actual numerical representation of the date, which in my opinion is better just for speed and for calculation purposes. I like to use value 2. So I'm going to use value 2. If you see that, that is what it means. So that's really all we need to do there. So let's go ahead and test this out. So I'm just going to add in some spaces, coding, Dojo. We can kind of see we have that all there. If we were to right click, go to Dojo, Cells, and Trim, we'll see we now lose all those spaces before, after, and in the middle. So if we were to again do this, coding, Dojo, you can right click, Cells, and Trim. And actually, I misspoke. It doesn't remove the ones in between, but the ones at the beginning and at the end. All right. So that is the trim. The last one here for the cells that we're going to do is format numbers, as with a comma and no decimal. So again, I'm just going to copy this code. This one's going to be format cell. Now here, instead of setting the cell's value, what we're going to do is the cell's number format. So we're going to set the cell's number format, and how we do that is we have a list of items separated by semicolons. And for us, what we're going to do is positive, negatives, and zeros, and so that's going to be in that order. So what we're going to do is we can use a hash to represent any number. and also a wild card. So we're going to do those three, and then semicolon, and we're going to put negatives in parentheses. So you can see we have our parentheses there, separated by a semicolon. And then lastly, we are going to do a hyphen for zeros. And it's kind of tricky there with the apostrophes, so you need 2 before and 3 after. So that's really it for that one. So let's go ahead and again test this. We'll put in some numbers here. Negative and 0. So now what we can do is highlight our region, right-click, Dojo, Cells, and Format. You can see we have our numbers here with commas and no decimals, negatives with parentheses, and zeros as a hyphen. Awesome. So that's all the macros for the cells. Next, we need the ones for the sheets. So again, there are going to be 3 pretty similar macros. So there'll be a lot of copy and pasting here. But to start, we're going to do the protect sheet. So I have sub protect sheet. And we actually need 2 variables for this one. We're going to need a sheet variable for sheet iteration. So we have dim sh as worksheet. And we're also going to have shts as a variant. So this is a little tricky, but basically what this is doing is it's going to sheet is going to be used to store an array of sheets that we currently have selected. So if we were to add a couple sheets here, right now we have 3 sheets selected. And when we run the macro, we have to protect each one individually. We can't protect them all at the same time, so we'll have to go through each sheet, protect them, and at the very end, we want to select the sheets that the user selected in the beginning. So we're going to use the sheets variant to do that. So what we're going to do is set sheets equal to windows. So that's going to be the active window that we have on display. And we're going to do the selected sheets property. All right. So basically what this is going to do is store sheets 1, 2, and 3 into the sheets variant, so we know that we have them selected. Because, as I said before, when we protect the sheets, we have to do so individually, and we actually have to select the sheet that we want to protect one at a time. So first thing we're going to do is just do an active sheets.select, active sheet.select. And so that means if we have, sheet 1, 2, and 3 selected like this, and we're on, let's say we're on sheet 2 like we are here, it's just going to select sheet 2. So it's going to basically ungroup the sheets and select sheet 2. So then we can go from there and protect it. And I did misspoke. You don't need to actually select each sheet to protect them, but you can't have multiple sheets selected to protect. So by just selecting one of the sheets, we can then protect any number of them. So for each sheet in sheets, so that means it's going to go, it's going to iterate for each sheet in the sheets, variable. So the sheets that we had selected previously, we are going to test if the sheet is protected. So that's protect contents. If the sheet protects contents. So if that is true, then we need to unprotect it. Else we need to protect it. And then we can go next sheet. So that will protect all the sheets through the iteration here. And then lastly, we just want to select the sheets that we previously selected, or that we previously had selected that we had unselected at the time. All right, so that's it for the macro. So let's go ahead and run this one here. So let's say we had sheets 1 and sheets 2 selected. We right click Dojo Sheets now and hit protect. We'll see it did switch sheets, but it did go through each one and protect them, and we still have our 2 sheets selected here. So if we were to go under, if we try to just type, we get the protection alert, and then sheet 3 will not. So one thing here to note, since it's looking at each sheet to see if it's protected and then unprotecting it, if we were to select all 3, run this, what we'll actually get is now this is unprotected. Oh, that's because I'm selected on all our sheets still. So this is unprotected, this is unprotected, but now this is protected. So because sheet 3 wasn't protected to begin with, it is now protected. So sheets 1 and 2 are unprotected. Sheets 3 is protected. So we can just unprotect that. Great. So the last two here, the first one we're going to do is sub hide sheets. So this is just going to hide every sheet that you have selected. Oops, misspelled that. So again, we're going to have some repetition here. So I'm just going to start with the whole thing. But we actually don't need this sheets variant because we don't need to worry about selecting the sheets at the very end. So we don't need that. And instead of using the variant there, we can just paste it there. So now we're doing for each sheet in the Windows selected sheets. So for each selected sheet, all we're going to do is sheet.visible equals Excel sheet hidden. We don't need that select at the end. So that's all we're going to do is hide any sheets that's selected. So if we select sheets 1 and 2, sheets hide. So now we only have sheets 2, and we can view these two as hidden. And then lastly here is the duplication of sheets. So again, I'm going to copy that. And what we're going to do is sheet.copy. And we're going to say after sheet. So basically this allows you to copy the sheets and it'll place them directly after the parent or the original. So if we had these 3 sheets selected, sheets and duplicate sheet. Oh, I didn't rename it here, so let's do that. Duplicate sheet. And we'll go ahead and run that now. So now we can see we have, let's make this a little bigger. So we have sheet 1 and then the copy right after, sheet 2, the copy, sheet 3, and the copy. So that'll duplicate all the sheets. So that's really it for all the code that we went through in the issue. I did promise some additional tips here. So mostly on error handling. So as you can see, none of these are used to handle errors. So if we were to select all of our sheets and try to hide them, we'll get this error because it's trying to hide the only visible sheet, which Excel cannot do. So what I would recommend doing here is using some error handling or some additional testing to see, is for like the hiding sheets, is every sheet selected? If that's the case, then, we may not want to hide every sheet or rather give a warning to the user. But I'm just going to focus strictly on error handling so I don't have to, write all the code for all the testing. So for example, here, if we were to do on error, you could do resume next, which will basically skip the error and just go to the next sheet. So if we were to unhide our sheets here and select all these sheets, sheets hide, it'll all go through. It won't give you an error. It'll just stop on the last sheet because basically there was an error here trying to make it hidden. So it just errored out and stopped running. So that's one method of error handling that you could use on some of these other ones as well. What you could also do is you could use a go-to statement. So you could use on error go to, maybe what we want to do is add a new sheet and hide the sheet that we had selected. So we could just call this new sheet. So basically what we'll do is if it hits an error, we'll go to this new sheet portion of the code, and what we'll do is we'll do a worksheets sheet.add, and we are going to want to set the sheet visible to hidden because it's in the for loop. It should still work here. So let's try that. If we were to select these again, hide. So let's see where we get here. So we can go ahead and step through this by doing F8 worksheets.add. There we go. So it added a new worksheet, and then it hid the last sheet that it errored out on. So because it errored out on sheet, it then was still sheet down here, and so it hid it. One thing you'll notice here, if we were to unhide all these again, so if we didn't select all sheets and just did the hide there, so we're getting an error here because it went through all of our sheets, and the last sheet's going to be none, or it's going to be set to nothing, so we're getting an error. So what we can do here is we actually don't even want to do this where we add a new sheet and then try to hide the last one, so we can just do an exit. So there. So this way, if we don't get an error, it'll just exit rather than going to these next two lines of code and erroring out. So that's what we can do there. So now, again, we can just kind of test it here. And there we go. So now we don't have a sheet 9 that was added, or sheet 10, whichever we're on, but it hid the two sheets we selected. So that's kind of the different ways you can use error handling. You can either ignore the error or do something with the error. As recommended, you can also use if statements to do some additional tests, which typically I would recommend because using go-to statements gets a little messy in longer macros. So last thing I'm going to show here is basically how to save this as an add-in. So then anytime you open up Excel, you will be able to use these macros. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do save as, so F12 here, and I'm going to go to my documents. Actually, I'm going to go out to my PC and my C drive, users, Scott, and then I'm going to do to app data, which may not be shown. So you kind of have to app data. Let's see here. So app data. Then we're going to go to roaming, and we're going to go to Microsoft, and then we should get to this add-ins folder. So what we can do is save this as an Excel add-in right around somewhere. Excel. There it is, all the way at the bottom. So you can see I have two add-ins here. We can call this Dojo. And so now that we have that add-in saved, if we were to close this, and now if we go ahead and open up a new Excel document here, we have to first install it. So Excel add-ins here, we have to check our Dojo, and now we still don't have it. Let's try it again. And there we have it. So there's our Dojo with our macros. So what I did is when you create a new add-in, you have to go to this Excel add-ins and then check it to add it as an add-in, and then you can hit OK. And next time you open Excel, that add-in will run, and you can use the macros inside. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned something new. Feel free to let me know what you learned in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you in the next issue.